were created to make a sound, not just to echo the noise. Welcome to the Amplified Era podcast. I am your host, Nadia Morris. I am here to help you push past the fear, identify the silence, and birth the purpose you've been carrying. We are leaving the safety of the shadows and stepping into the spotlight of your destiny. This is season 1, The Great Unmuzzling. So if you are ready to take the mute button of your life, let's get to work. Welcome to another episode of the Amplified Era podcast. We are way advanced into season 1 and we're almost completing season 1, and we are in phase 3 and we are in the execution amplification stage of the Amplified Era. And so over the last few weeks you would have project managed your purpose, you survived the labor pains, you kicked the contaminators out of your delivery room. If you listened to last week's episode, listen, I've been getting messages even today about the spiritual anchors that were added to the episode dealing with the different archetypes that you can find in your delivery room. And the essence of this season and this entire podcast is for you to take your muzzle off. So, but there's a truth that we have to face today, and just because you have recognized the muzzle and taken off the muzzle, it doesn't mean that you know how to speak as yet. And your vocal cords would probably be withered right now because of how you've been whispering for years, because you've spent so much time shrinking your voice, and you're just there to make small-minded people comfortable. So now it's time for you to take the floor. That's what we're here to talk about. And you may not know what it's supposed to sound like. And so today's episode 10, is really dealing with the sound of freedom. So I am your Purpose Midwife, Nadia Morris, and we are taking off the muzzle. And that was step 1, but now we're going to step into finding that frequency that you need to be on. And right now, many of you are not speaking with freedom. Many of you are speaking with an echo. You're speaking with an apology, and you're terrified of being called intimidating. So you just simply blend in and just exist. And you would have known or seen and understood the trajectory of this season, and we are going to deal with what we need to do now. And so let's jump into it. So when we talk about the echo versus the voice, when you are a high achieving woman and you first step into authority, you usually suffer from what I would call the ventriloquist dummy syndrome. You know the ventriloquist dolls, where you open your mouth but there's no voice coming out, and you speak in an echo because it's not really your voice, right? Some of you just don't trust your anointing just yet, and so some of us are wearing our mentors cadence. You are using your pastor's vocabulary. You sound just like who you are around, and you're just copying industry jargon of your competitors. But like David, who was being asked to wear Saul's suit, it is just an ill-fitting suit. And so you think that if you sound like somebody who is already successful, then you will inherit their success. But I want to show you that there's a danger in mimicry. There's a danger in it, because if you sound exactly like someone else, you will attract their assigned audience, not your own audience. So you have to be very careful how you navigate that trap. And the trap is that when someone comes to you for example, deliverance, when they buy a book or a product or a service, you will burn out. Because why? You do not have the grace to sustain a counterfeit frequency. And it's very easy to copy what somebody else is doing, but it cannot be sustained. And what God is saying in this season is that He has given you the grace for your calling, not the grace to play a character or to sound like somebody. He didn't call you to be an echo of someone else's breakthrough, of what someone else sounds like. He has given you something very specific, a unique frequency, and that is your assigned audience that is really waiting on you to step out and really to be free, so that you're not echoing somebody else. So if you sound like everybody else, the people you are called to serve won't be able to find you in the noise. So you have to literally drop the echo and trust your own voice. And the thing is, why do we do this? Why do we do it? We often soften our voices, and sometimes, we sound like, having these high pitched customer service tones when you're pitching a multi-million dollar contract, when you're requesting your budget. And it's because you're sometimes terrified of being labeled aggressive, too much, intimidating. And so society has really trained us as women as well that the brilliance that we have is acceptable as long as it's palatable, right? I want to get one thing straight today in today's boardroom, by the way, and I want you to write it down, put it on a sticky note somewhere on your mirror, that intimidation is not your problem. The intimidation is really their trigger. So it's not that you're intimidating, it's that other people are intimidated by you, and that is a massive difference that you have to understand as well. And sometimes you are simply operating at a capacity that exposes other people's complacency. And if you probably would have heard or seen the trend in the discussions before that we would have had, that many people, they may say you're too much, or you're bringing too much, or you're doing too much, because what you're doing is really highlighting or shining a spotlight on what the things that they should have done already. So their complacency, is being showed up because you're out here doing the most, right? And so when you walk into a room fully prepared, fully anointed, and fully persuaded of what your strategy is, it acts as a mirror to people who are just simply existing, to people who are just posting. So I've seen it, and I've always seen it. People who are on fire for God are going to seem odd to people who are lukewarm or simply cold, because you're gonna wonder, does it take that much to do what they're doing? Yes, they are on fire for God. And so when you're not on fire for God, and you're really contemplating whether or not you want to walk in your assignment, they are already far advanced, far ahead in their assignment, and you're looking at them, oh, them just too enough. No, they are just on fire for God, and they are insisting that they are going to complete what they have started, or what God has given them to do. So what am I saying? You cannot negotiate your God-given authority down to a level that makes insecure people feel safe. And I believe that is something that many of us struggle with. You don't know how to walk in your authority, you're scared of your authority. And the fact is, the enemy knows who you are. The enemy knows who you are, he knows what you carry. It's sometimes us that don't see it, and then once he keeps you in a space where you settle, that is where he's comfortable. So I'm gonna say it again. You cannot negotiate your God-given authority down to a level that makes insecure people feel safe. So for the women, high capacity women, powerful women, women who are seeking to step into that sphere, if your presence makes people uncomfortable, they do not have the capacity for your assignment. Yeah. So if your presence is making people feel uncomfortable, why are you behaving like this all of a sudden? And it's gonna seem a way, because for me, as I settle into my role as leader, I am going to assess what is not working for me, what is working, and know that you realize that God has called and placed you somewhere. You're going to start stepping up and not shrinking anymore to be in the rooms. So, in essence, you have to stop shrinking to fit into rooms that you've already outgrown. And the sound of freedom does not cater to the insecurities of the audience. You cannot cater to other people's insecurities. You have to just move and do what you have to do. And so I want to move on to the segment that speaks to how you master this executive voice, right? And it's time to talk the strategy now. And it's very basic, because you have to know physically and mentally shift out of the apologetic zone and tone and into the sound of freedom. But how are we gonna do that? So I'm gonna share with you 3 tactics you need to deploy immediately. The first one, and when you are a woman, it's quite easy for you to speak in high pitch, right? And so the first tactic you're gonna do as you start to now shift from being the apologetic tone and into the sound of freedom is you're gonna have to drop your pitch. So when you're anxious or you're trying to be palatable, you're trying to water down, you're trying to fit in, you start to breathe from your chest. And if you're a singer, you know that to raise the pitch of your voice, sometimes it's gonna make you sound nervous, like you're seeking approval when you're speaking. And so, and singers would know, if you start to now breathe from your diaphragm and dropping your voice into this natural, authoritative bass register, the authority sits in that lower register. So you have to breathe deep, speak from your diaphragm and not your throat. Yeah, you ever hear sometimes you're talking and meet and people say, I can't hear you, I can't hear you. But then when you start to speak from your diaphragm and not from your throat, then you can spot the difference. And sometimes when you're nervous, that throat sound, it comes naturally. So you have to be very intentional about how you speak. Do not speak in a high pitched voice. Speak, drop your pitch, and speak from your diaphragm. The same way you speak from a diaphragm, you speak from your diaphragm and not your throat, right? All right, tactic 2. And I believe we would have touched on this over various sessions. You have to remove those qualifiers, those extra words from your sentences. I just think this might be a bad idea. But I'm no expert, but listen, you have to learn to remove those fillers and qualifiers. Remove them out of your out of your sentences, because what you're doing is really discrediting what you have laid out on the table. You have a great strategy, you have a great plan, but then you're thinking, I'm no expert, but maybe this can work. Listen, that you're sabotaging your own self. So what you have to do is, as I've said before, state the strategy, present your data, and put a full stop at the end of the sentence. You don't need to upsell what you are speaking about, and stop putting question marks at the end of your statement. Stop putting question marks at the end of your statement. And the third tactic that we will talk about in the Sound of Freedom is silence. Listen, nothing beats silence. Amateurs will ramble to fill the dead space when there's dead air. But you pitch a prize and you're talking nervously and justifying what you just said. Executives speak their piece, they state their price, and they just be silent and let that lift the room. It gets awkward, but you have to let it be awkward. And sometimes you just have to be quiet and allow the silence to do what it needs to do. And so, yeah, those are the main things I wanted to talk about today. The sound of freedom, moving from the echo. Stop being an echo, stop being following what other people are doing, following what is trendy. It is easy to be swallowed up on social media. You want to do what is trending, what is happening, but it's not you. You have to find your niche, you have to be your authentic self, and to step out and to do what you need to do, right? And so we have to stop echoing what is around us, because we are not a ventriloquist doll. We have to do and we have to speak, and so we have to move from that. All right, so the purpose corner. Today was not gonna be a long episode. I promised myself I was not gonna talk 30 minutes today, but here we are at the 17-minute mark. Right? So it's not gonna be 30 minutes today, but let's see about that. So in the purpose corner, I want to drop a little corporate strategy for a minute and deal with the spiritual weight of your voice. Because in the kingdom of God, that is, you don't just communicate. Your voice is used to decree. And Job 22 verse 28 says, Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee. And so if you would look at the Battle of Jericho, they did not win that battle by fighting with a sword. They won by releasing a sound at a specific frequency, at a specific time, and it shattered the walls of Jericho. So your voice, you should not view it as a communication tool. It is really a weapon of, I wouldn't say mass destruction, but mass construction. So, right? So when you stop apologizing, when you start to sound like, when you stop trying to sound like your mentor, when you start decreeing what God told you to build, the walls of opposition in your business, in your finances, in your family have to come down, because then you have a decree, and they have absolutely no choice but to fall flat. But freedom has a sound, and that sound is actually a decree that you need to sound out of your own mouth. I don't know what it is, that you need to pause right now to think about what is happening in your life where you have not spoken a word into it, that you have not spoken the scripture into that situation. I want you to think about that and to jump on that as soon as you get off this podcast episode. And so, for your homework, as I said, freedom does not sound like an apology. It sounds like you're executing something. So, for your homework for this week, I want you to do a voice memo audit. I want you to pull out your phone, hit the voice memo app, pitch your business, pitch your ministry, your vision, and just talk about it for 2 minutes straight. Then I want you to sit back and listen to what you just recorded. And I want you to be very honest with yourself. Be honest. Does it sound like an echo? Does it sound like an apology? Does it sound executive? And I want you to adjust the frequency that you want to be heard on until what you're recording matches the weight of what you're supposed to do. Right? So think about it. Grab your phone, open the voice memo app, and record that vision, that ministry. Talk about it for 2 minutes straight. Do that. And then listen to it, and if it doesn't sound like what it's supposed to sound like in your head, then it is up to you now to re-record it until it does. And so next week we are dealing with the casualties of leadership, where you are now speaking with authority, but you might be bleeding while you are doing it. So in episode 11, I want to talk about from broken to blooming. And next week I'll share what is happening. I'm not sure if I'm going to share it just yet. But I want to tackle how to heal while holding authority. You don't want to miss it. I am not the Purpose Midwife. I want you to drop the echo, make the decree, and just stay amplified. So see you next week. Bye. Thank you for stepping into the Amplified Ear with me today. If this episode sparked a fire in you, don't let it burn out. The best way to support this movement is to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a woman who is ready to find her voice. You can connect with me on social media at Nadia the Purpose Midwife to keep the conversation going. And remember, the muzzle is off, the silence is broken, and you have permission to take up space. Until next time, keep blooming.